When arrogance meets Earth, General Zixtal stood on the command deck of the Imperial dreadnought Eternal Dominion, his forearms crossed behind his back as he gazed out at the small blue world hanging in the void. In his 300 years of service to the Galactic Empire, he had overseen the conquest of 89 star systems. Entire civilizations had knelt before his fleet. Advanced species with technology spanning millennia had surrendered after seeing the might of his armada. This would be number 5. The planet called Earth looked pathetically vulnerable. His scouts had reported a primitive species that had barely begun to explore their own solar system. They still used chemical rockets and nuclear fission. Their largest warships were tiny metal boxes that would crumble under a single plasma burst from his smallest fighter craft. "Status report," Zixtal commanded, his translator converting his clicks and hisses into the common Imperial tongue. Commander Velthar, his second-in-command, consulted her holographic display. "Fleet positioning complete, General. 500 ships in attack formation. Ground assault forces ready for deployment. The Primitive's defense satellites have been mapped and can be eliminated in 0.3 time units." Zixtal's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. The Galactic Empire had perfected the art of conquest. Overwhelming force, swift victory, minimal losses. These humans would see his fleet and immediately understand the futility of resistance. They always did. "Open a communication channel to the planet," he ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the image of several primitive humans gathered in what appeared to be their command center. They looked fragile, with soft skin and only 2 arms each. Their leader, an elderly male with gray fur on his head, stepped forward. "I am General Zixtal of the Galactic Imperial Fleet," he announced, his image being broadcast to every communication device on the planet below. "Your world has been selected for integration into our empire. We have conquered 89 star systems before yours. Resistance is futile and will only result in unnecessary casualties." He paused, letting his words sink in. "You have 24 of your time. Units to surrender unconditionally. Your weapons will be confiscated. Your population will be relocated to designated zones. Your resources will serve the Empire. This is not a negotiation. This is an inevitability." The human leader looked around at his companions, then back at the screen. To Zixtal's surprise, the primitive didn't look afraid. Instead, he seemed almost amused. "I'm President Harrison," the human said, "and I have a message for you and your empire." He leaned forward slightly. "Come and take it." The transmission ended. Zixtal stared at the blank screen in disbelief. In 300 years, no species had ever refused his ultimatum. Not the technologically advanced Zilithians. Not the warrior race of Mortok. Not even the psychic ethereals of the Andorian cluster. "General," Velthar said hesitantly, "perhaps they did not understand the magnitude of our force." "Show them," Zixtal snarled. The fleet moved into a demonstration formation, each massive warship taking position around the small planet. Energy weapons powered up, creating visible streams of deadly light between the vessels. It was a display that had brought entire civilizations to their knees. Hours passed. No surrender came. "Sir," reported the communications officer, "we're detecting massive activity on the planet's surface. They appear to be mobilizing." Zixtal's eyes narrowed. "Impossible. Show me." The tactical display lit up with thousands of heat signatures. Across the planet, military bases were activating. Civilian populations were moving with purpose rather than fleeing in panic. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to be converting their industrial facilities for war production at an impossible rate. "They're turning their automobile factories into weapons manufacturers," Velthar observed, her voice tinged with confusion. "Their civilian aircraft are being converted to military specifications. Even their food processing plants are being retooled." "Primitives," Zixtal muttered. "They don't understand what they're facing." That's when the first human vessel appeared. It was crude, obviously hastily constructed, little more than a chemical rocket with a nuclear warhead strapped to the front. It should have been easily destroyed by the fleet's point defense systems. It wasn't alone. Hundreds of them came streaming up from the planet's surface. Thousands. Simple, desperate, suicidal attacks that no tactical computer could predict because they made no logical sense. "Destroy them," Zixtal ordered. His ships opened fire, vaporizing the primitive craft by the dozens. But for every one destroyed, 10 more appeared. The humans were throwing everything they had into space: converted passenger aircraft, mining, vessels, even what appeared to be modified garbage trucks with rocket engines attached. "Sir," his weapons officer reported, "these attacks are having no effect on our shields, but they're forcing us to expend ammunition and energy at an unexpected rate." That's when the real surprise came. 3 human fighters, no larger than atmospheric aircraft, came diving out of the asteroid belt. They had somehow managed to coat themselves in asteroid dust and debris, making them nearly invisible to the fleet's sensors. The lead fighter, piloted by someone called Captain Sarah Chen, according to intercepted communications, did something no civilized species would consider. She rammed her tiny craft directly into the command tower of a Krethian destroyer. The explosion was insignificant by Imperial standards. The destroyer wasn't even seriously damaged, but the psychological impact rippled through the fleet like a shockwave. "They're willing to die," Velthar whispered. "Not just their military, all of them." More human vessels appeared, each more improvised than the last. The humans were welding mining equipment to spacecraft, turning civilian transports into bomb ships, using construction mechs as makeshift fighters. None of it should have worked. But it did, because the Krethian tactical computers had no protocols for enemies who viewed their own deaths as acceptable losses if it meant taking the enemy with them. "Launch the ground assault," Zixtal commanded. "End this quickly." The first wave of Krethian dropships descended toward the major population centers. Each ship carried 1,000 elite Imperial soldiers equipped with the finest armor and weapons the Empire could provide. The ships landed in the ruins of New York, London, Tokyo, and Moscow. The humans had somehow evacuated their cities before the bombardment, but Zixtal was confident his forces would quickly locate and capture the civilian populations. What they found instead was every building turned into a fortress. Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez crouched in the rubble of what had once been a Manhattan office building. She wasn't a soldier. She had been a construction foreman before the aliens arrived. But when the call went out for volunteers, she and her entire crew had answered. The alien troops moved through the streets in perfect formation, their energy weapons scanning for targets. They were disciplined, professional, and completely unprepared. For what came next, Maria triggered the charges her crew had placed throughout the building's foundation. The entire structure came down on top of the alien patrol. It wasn't sophisticated warfare. It wasn't honorable. It was simply effective. Across the planet, similar scenes were playing out. Farmers were turning their chemical sprayers into weapons. Mechanics were building explosive devices from car parts. Teachers were organizing resistance cells using their knowledge of local geography. The aliens had superior technology, but they had never faced an enemy where every single individual was a potential combatant. "Sir," reported Ground Commander Theclon, "we are encountering unexpected resistance. The humans are not fighting like any species we have previously encountered." "Explain," Zixtal demanded. "They hide in structures and ambush our patrols. When we destroy a building, they simply move to another one. When we corner them, they detonate explosive devices rather than surrender. They fight with primitive weapons but use tactics our computers cannot predict." Zixtal studied the tactical displays, showing his ground forces' progress. After 12 hours, they had taken no significant territory and were suffering casualties at an alarming rate. "These humans," he said slowly, "they do not fight like a military force. No, sir. They fight like every single one of them has been personally threatened." Back in space, the situation was becoming even more problematic. The humans had somehow managed to capture several damaged Krethian fighters and were already attempting to reverse engineer the technology. Dr. James Liu had been working for 72 hours straight in an underground laboratory, dissecting alien technology, with tools borrowed from a dozen different scientific disciplines. He wasn't a weapons expert. He had been researching renewable energy before the invasion, but now he was humanity's best hope for understanding how the alien energy systems worked. "It's actually simpler than our technology," he reported to the military commanders via encrypted communication. "More powerful but simpler, like they never had to develop efficiency because they always had overwhelming force." Within days, the first human weapons based on captured alien technology were rolling off the production lines. They weren't as sophisticated as the originals, but they were effective. More importantly, they were being produced at a rate that horrified the Krethian observers. "Sir," Velthar reported, "our intelligence division has calculated that the humans are manufacturing war materials at 300% of their pre-invasion industrial capacity. They have converted their entire civilization to warfare in less than one planetary rotation." Zixtal was beginning to understand that he had made a terrible miscalculation. These humans weren't just refusing to surrender, they were adapting, at a pace that defied everything the Empire knew about primitive species. But the worst was yet to come. Lieutenant Tom Bradley had been monitoring alien communications from a hidden facility beneath the ruins of Colorado Springs. He wasn't a trained intelligence officer. He had been a computer programmer before the war. But he had discovered something that changed everything. "General Morrison," he called over the encrypted channel, "you need to hear this. I've been listening to their internal communications, and sir, they're not just fighting us. They're fighting rebellions on every world they've conquered." The implications were staggering. The mighty Krethian Empire, which had dominated the galaxy for centuries, was actually spread dangerously thin. Their show of overwhelming force was exactly that, a show. "How thin?" Morrison asked. "Sir, I estimate they have maybe 10% of their total fleet here. The rest are busy putting down uprisings across their entire territory." That night, President Harrison addressed the world once more, but this time he wasn't just speaking to Earth. Using captured alien communication technology, his message was broadcast to every enslaved world in the Krethian Empire. "This is Earth calling all oppressed peoples. We are humans, and we are fighting. The Krethian Empire. We are winning." The message was simple, but its impact was electric. If a primitive world like Earth could stand against the Empire, what was stopping the rest of the galaxy? As Zixtal watched his perfectly planned conquest crumble around him, he began to understand that he hadn't just underestimated humanity's military capabilities. He had underestimated their capacity to inspire hope in others. The war for Earth was far from over, but the Krethian Empire's days of unchallenged dominance were already ending. How humans broke an empire. General Zixtal received the news of the galaxy-wide rebellion while standing in the wreckage of his command center. A human missile, nothing more than a converted cargo ship filled with explosives, had somehow penetrated his flagship's defenses and detonated against the hull. The damage was superficial, but the message was clear. Nowhere was safe. "Sir," Commander Velthar reported, her voice strained, "we have confirmed uprisings on 47 worlds. The Zalithians have reclaimed their home system. The Mortok warrior clans have united and are advancing on the Kepler sector. The Ethereals are using their psychic abilities to coordinate resistance across 3 spiral arms." Zixtal's 4 arms trembled with rage. All because of one primitive world? The human broadcast reached every enslaved population in the Empire, Velthar confirmed. "They're calling it the Earth signal. Our propaganda networks have been completely undermined." Down on Earth's surface, the situation had devolved into something the Krethian military had never encountered. Total warfare. Not just military, against military, but an entire species fighting for its survival with every tool at its disposal. In the ruins of Chicago, Master Sergeant Jake Thompson led a squad of soldiers through the underground tunnel system. Thompson had been a subway maintenance worker before the invasion. Now he was using his knowledge of the city's infrastructure to turn the alien occupation into a nightmare. "Remember," he told his squad, "these aliens think in straight lines. They expect us to fight them head-on. We're going to hit their supply. Depot from below, grab what we can, and be gone before they know what happened." The squad consisted of a mix of actual soldiers and volunteers, a school teacher, 2 mechanics, a nurse, and a retired firefighter. It shouldn't have worked as a military unit, but it did. Because they were fighting for their home. They emerged from the storm drains directly beneath the alien supply depot. The Crethean guards were positioned to watch for attacks from ground level, not from below. Thompson's improvised team disabled the guards with weapons that were part human engineering, part reverse-engineered alien technology. Package secured. Thompson radioed back to base. We've got enough power cells to keep the downtown resistance running for a month. Similar raids were happening across the planet. The humans had learned to use their own infrastructure against the invaders. Subway systems became supply routes. Sewer networks became transportation corridors. Office buildings became vertical battlefields where human knowledge of the terrain gave them decisive advantages. But the real game changer was happening in laboratories around the world. Dr. Elena Vasquez had been a materials scientist before the war. Now she was leading a team of researchers in an underground facility beneath the ruins of Mexico City, working with alien technology that should have been centuries beyond human understanding. The breakthrough came when we stopped trying to copy their technology exactly, she explained to the assembled team of scientists and engineers. Instead, we're adapting it to work with our manufacturing capabilities. The result was weapons and equipment that combined alien power sources with human ingenuity. They weren't as advanced as pure Crethean technology, but they could be mass-produced using Earth's existing industrial base. More importantly, they were being designed by people who understood how humans actually fought. Captain Lisa Park piloted the first human fighter equipped with hybrid technology through the wreckage of the orbital battle zone. Her aircraft was a modified F-35 with alien power systems and energy weapons integrated into its frame. It shouldn't have been possible to merge two completely different technological paradigms so quickly, but humans had always been good at improvisation. "This is Eagle 1, Park reported as she engaged a Crethean interceptor. "The hybrid systems are responding perfectly. Alien shields can't compensate for our flight patterns." The alien pilot was skilled and his ship was technically superior, but he had been trained to fight other aliens who flew in predictable patterns. Park had learned to fly by buzzing mountains and threading canyons. Her erratic, seemingly random movements confused the aliens' targeting systems long enough for her to get a clean shot. The Crethean fighter exploded in a brilliant flash of light. "Scratch one, alien," Park reported. "These hybrid systems are giving us a real chance." Across the planet, human resistance was evolving from desperate improvisation into coordinated warfare, but the most devastating blow to the Crethean Empire came from an unexpected source. Corporal Danny Kim had been a network administrator before the invasion. Now he was humanity's greatest weapon against the alien communication systems. "I've been studying their network architecture," he reported to General Morrison during a secure briefing. "The Cretheans have never had to worry about information security because they've always been the dominant force. Their entire communication system is built on the assumption that no one would dare try to hack them." "What are you saying, Corporal?" "I'm saying I can access their entire military network. Fleet positions, supply lines, even personal communications between commanders. But more than that, sir. I can broadcast on their own frequencies." The implications were staggering. If humans could tap into the Crethean communication network, they could coordinate with rebel forces across the galaxy in real time. "Do it," Morrison ordered. Within hours, Danny had established contact with resistance movements on dozens of worlds. The Zilithians shared technical specifications for improved weapons. The Mortok provided tactical intelligence about Crethean weak points. The Ethereals used their psychic abilities to coordinate simultaneous attacks across multiple star systems. For the first time in the Empire's history, their enemies were sharing information faster than the Cretheans could react to it. General Zixtel watched his carefully constructed empire crumble on the tactical displays. Red indicators showed rebellion spreading like wildfire across the galaxy. His fleet commanders were reporting massive defections as conquered species reclaimed their freedom. "Sir," Velthar said quietly, "Command is ordering us to withdraw from the Earth system and return to defend the core worlds." "Withdraw?" Zixtal's mandibles clicked with disbelief. "We have never withdrawn from a conquest. Sir, the Empire is collapsing. If we don't act quickly, we'll lose everything." But it was already too late. President Harrison's voice echoed across every communication system in the Crethean fleet, transmitted on their own frequencies with perfect clarity. This is President Harrison of Earth, speaking to all free peoples of the galaxy. Today marks the beginning of the end for those who would conquer and enslave. We call upon every world, every species, every individual who values freedom to stand with us. The message continued, but Zixtal wasn't listening. He was watching his fleet's morale collapse in real time as human propaganda reached his own soldiers. The final blow came from an impossible source. Commander Sarah Chen, the human pilot who had initially rammed her fighter into a Crethian destroyer, approached the alien flagship in a captured alien scout ship. She should have been dead. Instead, she was leading a squadron of hybrid fighters crewed by humans who had somehow learned to operate alien technology in a matter of weeks. This is Commander Chen to the Crethian flagship. Her voice came over the communication system. I'm here to accept your surrender. The audacity of it was breathtaking. A primitive human was offering to accept the surrender of the galaxy's most feared military commander. Zixtal almost laughed. Then he looked at his tactical displays. His fleet was scattered, dealing with rebellions across the galaxy. His ground forces on Earth were trapped in urban warfare they couldn't win. His communication networks had been compromised. His supply lines were under constant attack. Most importantly, he was receiving reports that the core worlds of the Empire were under siege by their own former subjects, now armed with hybrid human-alien technology and coordinated through human communication networks. General, Vilthar said softly, perhaps it is time to consider terms. For the first time in his 300-year career, General Zixtal was forced to admit the unthinkable. He had been defeated by a species that shouldn't have been able to offer meaningful resistance. The formal surrender took place aboard the human space station Unity, hastily constructed from salvaged alien technology and human industrial capacity. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered to witness the end of the Crethean Empire. Zixtal stood before the assembled delegates, his proud bearing diminished, but not broken. President Harrison approached him with the surrender documents. I don't understand, Zixtal said quietly. We had superior technology, superior numbers, superior experience. How did you defeat us? Harrison considered the question carefully. You conquered worlds, General. But we fought for our home. You expected surrender when faced with overwhelming odds. We saw those same odds as motivation to fight harder. You relied on fear to maintain control. We offered hope to those who had forgotten it existed. He paused, looking out at the diverse gathering of species that had come together to witness this moment. But most importantly, you assumed that because we were primitive, we were weak. You forgot that sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to think about it differently than anyone has before. The Crethean Empire formally dissolved 6 months later. Most of their former subjects chose independence, though some formed new alliances based on mutual cooperation rather than conquest. Earth became an unlikely center of galactic politics, not because humans were the strongest or most advanced species, but because they had proven that any oppression could be overcome with enough determination and creativity. General Morrison stood in the rebuilt Capitol building, looking out at a sky now filled with ships from dozens of different worlds, trade vessels, diplomatic transports, and even tourist ships from species who wanted to see the planet that had changed the galaxy. Hard to believe it's only been 2 years, he commented to President Harrison. The easy part is over. Harrison replied. Now we have to figure out how to keep the peace without becoming the kind of empire we just helped destroy. It was a challenge that would define humanity's role in the galaxy for generations to come. But if there was one thing the war had proven, it was that humans were very good at finding solutions to impossible problems. Across the galaxy, on worlds that had known only oppression for centuries, children were learning new words in their native languages, words like freedom, hope, and resistance. And they were learning that sometimes the smallest voice could change everything. The Crethean Empire had conquered 89 star systems through fear and overwhelming force. Humanity had liberated them all by refusing to accept that conquest was inevitable. In The end. It wasn't superior technology that won the war. It was the simple human belief that everyone deserves to be free.